at the company that I worked at, we used to send a lot of emails, a lot.
How
And
much? How much? Give us an
oh
order
man,
of magnitude.
uh, on average, I think was about, depending on how many campaigns we had on the day, but we had about 10 to 14 million per day. So
Wow.
every
And
day,
this was back in 2010, right?
2010.
Oh my God. Hey everybody, welcome to a new founder Q&A. And today I have a very special guest, Rafael Viana, who is a email deliverability expert and someone that I've really followed for the past, 10, 12 years or something. So I'm really excited to have him talk about everything about deliverability here with us. Thank you, Rafael.
Well, thank you, Zena, for inviting me. It's definitely a great honor to be here. And I can't say the same. I mean, we know each other for years, but we kept in touch on LinkedIn, and I have been seeing your growth, and and we ended up joining forces again, right? We have again found a way to come together in the world of email and email rap, as you can see, email's rap. Gotta love
It
email.
is.
It's its own thing.
Nice. So we have a lot of questions here from folks, and yeah, let's get started. So the first one is from X, and the question is how DMARC actually works and why I don't receive any reports. Never.
All right. So yeah, DMARC is a standard. It's a protocol, something that was invented by us, and we agreed upon a set of rules. And that rule pretty much it boils down to a DMARC record, which is pretty much a DNS record, and that follows a specific format, right? And that format contains some instructions, and that instruction is to be interpreted by folks receiving your email, and make decisions out of that. So, these decisions are related to if the message passes or not, some required authentications. And depending on what happens and the capability of that receiving server of interpreting that DMARC record and acting upon it, sometimes they can also send out a report. There are two types of report. One of them is called a aggregate report. It contains like basic information about the IP and email volume seen from that originating IP, the domain in the DKIM signature, the return path address, and all of that is sent to the email address that is defined in the RUA tag, the aggregate report. The other one is forensics report, and that's the RUF tag. Ideally, you want to have separate email addresses to receive them, so that way you have different places to hold.
Yeah,
Right.
the beauty of the DMARC record, the thing that I really appreciate about it is the fact that you can send a specific volume and evolve that record, right? Like this is really useful to prevent like phishing emails. So if you've been seeing other companies trying to impersonate your own domain, definitely make sure to enable DMARC. And there's like different strategies, like there's a quarantine, there's a way to reject all emails, and you can set the percentage. So you can evolve that record because there are many moving pieces, right? With email, like maybe your company is using Google Workspace and then using something else to send sales emails, and marketing emails is separate and transaction emails are separate. So
they don't talk to each other. Sometimes these departments, they don't know that they're sending emails, like what the other one is sending emails. So DMARC kind of gives visibility to everyone, or at the very least who has access to the email address that's receiving those reports. If you process those reports, you're able to turn them into graphs. And from those graphs, you're able to create some filters, and that will give you visibility on IPs that are sending emails on that domain's behalf. And sometimes they are expected and sometimes they're not, because could be a spoofing attack, or it could be misconfigured servers. That happens very, very often. I have a question for you. So yeah, why isn't it feasible for small senders to maintain a dedicated IP? This is
Yeah,
sent from Felix.
nice. Thanks, Felix. This is a super interesting question, and there's just something in the email industry. I don't know who started this, but there's this preconception that if you start using a dedicated IP, all of your reputation problems are solved, right? And that's not always the case. Like, you definitely do have more control when you have your own dedicated IP, but that's not always the thing that's going to help your reputation and help your emails to land. Especially when we're talking about small senders, right? Like, what, and the way you got to think about this is like reverse engineer who are these inbox providers that are receiving those emails and how they behave. So if they see like this one unique IP sending very little emails, like, they're not incentivized to showcase that to in the primary inbox, in the like available for everyone. They might just send it straight to the spam folder. So being on a shared IP is actually very helpful. It can be extreme. It's like a strategic decision to be on a shared IP. And once you are like, you're sending a high volume of emails per month and it's consistent, you don't have like crazy peaks in volume, then a dedicated IP could be a great solution. But it's definitely not a silver bullet, which I don't know where this came from.
I agree. I don't know, but as I agree with you 100%, it's more like more responsibility, right? Great powers with great responsibility. So definitely having an IP address is that you have to maintain it. You have to ensure that you're doing everything by the book. And that can be tough depending on the business type. You know, sometimes we see prospecting emails being sent out. And so ideally, you are going to have to manage that. And sometimes strategically being on a shared IP it's a good decision too, for sure.
So the next question is from Remy, and he asks, how do you even have a chance or do you even have a chance to set up your own email server these days?
That's a good question. I mean, setting up a server to send out email is hard. I mean, not hard, but I mean, you have to have that specific knowledge on how to properly configure that MTA and ensure that you're managing the bounce logs. You are understanding, how to list and subscribe. You got to manage your own list. You got to read all of those things. You got to add the click tracking on your side. You have to do a lot of things that it, you can do it. You can definitely do it, but it's going to cost money. Sometimes you don't have the expertise. So it's definitely better as a business decision to use a software as a service type of approach. I mean, time is money, right? If you are going down that path, it's because you absolutely need it. But in general, it makes more sense. Just use something that sends uh, and processes all of the information that you need to maintain a healthy email strategy. Because it's not just about just sending; it's understanding if people are liking it. It's understanding if what you're sending is something that the mailbox providers at the other end are saying, okay, we are seeing that your strategy is good because these addresses that you're sending to here with us, they exist. You're not trying to guess people's addresses or anything like that, because that is a strategy. People try to do that, right? And so, yeah, I mean, all of those things, you as a sender, instead of processing all of it by yourself, some type of service that gives that to you is the best thing. You will, I mean, there isn't anything that pays that back, right? You're going to spend time, money, and manpower to do something from scratch, or you're going to, hey, let me start with this, which gives everything, that I need. So yeah, definitely it's a business decision. So definitely make it a smart one for sure.
I love what you mentioned because like sending is just the start of the journey,
Yes.
right? Like how people behave in in relationship to what you send. That's the crucial thing. So there's a lot more around that than just like get a, a, a VPS and then start like setting up your own SMTP server. Have another one. This is a juicy one. And the question is how to navigate the Gmail/promotions black box, assuming I've passed SPF, TKIM, DMARC, and have unlist subscribe header. Like I have all that. What now? So this question is
Yeah.
from Anai.
All right. So one thing that I wanted to point out, because the way that this question came to us, and you mentioned it, you added that, like, you have all that. I think nowadays with the new standards that Gmail and Yahoo are putting out there, I mean, these are the biggest guys, right? And they're saying as in one voice, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and listen, subscribe. This is the minimum that we want to see. So it's not all of that. I think it's more the basic, that is what everyone as a sender needs to understand nowadays. This is for their own good. This is for their own protection. Is them protecting themselves as a brand, where people will see that as something, as a brand that they can trust, right? Because Gmail will highlight this sender has this, if you get a BIMI certificate and put the image, which is something else that is not here. And by the way, I think that's one way of also, let me circle back to that, but BIMI, which is something related also to the authentication, and it's a plus, and it will show up as something that stands out. It's like the blue checkbox in X, but there's definitely a blue checkbox in Gmail for these senders that are passing all of these things and have plus a certificate with BIMI. So BIMI, what it is a great way to pretty much stand out in the spam folder, or not the spam folder, in the promotions folder, because, and also avoid the spam folder, because as I said, you're being presenting yourself as a legit sender. And so that's one way to stand out, because with BIMI, you will be able to add your logo in the inbox, in the promotions tab. So nowadays we know there are ways they're still showing both versions, which is with the Google profile. But in the future, I think they're going more down the path that you have to use BIMI to show your logo there. And also when you click on the message, you will see the sender logo, which can only be added if you have all of these things and you have a certificate that sort of confirms that company is that company. And even for Apple users, they have Apple Mail app on their phone that stands out as well. There's like a whole I forgot if it's a checkbox or it says verified sender, and when you click on it, that certificate comes out. So that brings trust, and that's a way to stand out in the promotions tab as well.
Yeah,
So
like all those things that were mentioned, right? Like SPF, DKIM, DMARC,
yeah,
they're all on the DNS level. And there are solutions, just like you brought up, like BIMI, which are super effective and that can be added also on that DNS level. And then the list and subscribe, this is in the realm of like, what are the potential headers that I can add? And there's like this list unsubscribe
yeah.
post, so it can have like a one click unsubscribe. But there's, besides DNS and besides headers, there's the content, there's the actual
Yes.
domain, like the age
Sending
of the domain. Yeah, right.
sending to people that opted in, that
Yeah.
are
Hmm.
wanting, relevant content. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about, right?
Yeah.
It's
And the
just,
speed at which you send, right? Like there's so many factors.
yeah.
It's super tricky.
Yeah, and I just stuck with Bimmy. That's all I said. No, sorry guys. Bimmy is just like one other thing. all of that Zeno mentioned it's the absolute must here. I mean, the strategy of your email marketing setup is what will make or break what you're trying to achieve. I mean, for example, the other day I was chatting with my wife because we saw this place that said it was actually going out of business, and they went out of business, and she was like, "Yeah, I saw that they had an out of business sign." And we're like, yeah, sometimes companies, they do that. They're saying they're going out of business, to promote sales, and they never go out of business, right? And with email, we see a lot of that. Like we see a lot of subject lines like, hey, 20% off, 20% off, 20% off. So every day is 20% off, and people are already expecting 80, like, because they already know the 20% is just, the basic. So every day is a promotion. Nothing is ever new or exciting, because every day is everything new and exciting. It's like, that's the standard. So, I mean, for landing the promotions, of course, you're battling with others that are doing exactly that. So you got to find something that might work best for you. And that is an adjustment of frequency of content, of understanding the signals your subscribers are providing. Like, are they clicking? Are they visiting your product? Are they, what other metrics? Sometimes an in-app type of connection, right? All of that should be combined to understand, like, what is relevant to who you're sending, and try to do your best to do that. Of course, there is, of course, you gotta balance that out. You can't do that all the time, right? It's really tough. Not everyone has the technology or the manpower to do that, but try to, start with something. Just do the same for everyone isn't the best way to go. I, I just can say I can go there. I get paid to talk about email. You know that, right? That's what I have been doing for the last 10 years. So I can go on and on and on about this, but now it's your turn, Zeno. All right. Is Microsoft Outlook and Hotmail really rate limiting individual IPs per hour? So, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
That's so, the answer, just plain simple, is yes. Not only them, Gmail also does that, and every inbox provider in the world. In fact, rate limiting and throttling, these are the strategies that inbox providers have in order to still receive your email, but then process in a way where they can actually handle. Imagine, like, if you're working at Gmail, like the sheer amount of uh, volumes that you're receiving every day is just insane, right? So if they see, for example, a sender that is sending a huge amount of emails at once from the single domain, they not only throttle based on the IP, they throttle based on the domain as well. So if you're sending on that domain just like millions in 1 second, what they're going to do is like, okay, let's look at a sampling of that and let's determine where these initial emails are going to go. And then the rest, let's delay the delivery. And that's what they respond. Email service providers like Resend, like saying, hey, we're going to delay those emails, and then they'll process that hours later. And that's just the way it goes. So that's why it's important to send at a volume that, and there's no like real, like, or maybe not one that I know, like, oh, send this X amount and you're fine. It's more about, what are the spikes? Like, if you are sending 100 every day, and then one day you send 100,000, like, of course, like they're gonna detect that spike, and then they're gonna slow it down. So that's why it's so important to move gradually, which we're gonna talk in a bit more. Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about that
Mm-hmm.
really quick about Hotmail and Outlook, because that's very specific, right? We're talking about one guy here as Microsoft. And I have seen this firsthand before. I talked about email for 10 years. Before that, I used to send email. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And we used to send, at the company that I worked at, we used to send a lot of emails, a lot.
How
And,
much? How much? Give us an
man,
order of magnitude.
uh, on average, I think was about, depending on how many campaigns we had on the
Mhm.
day, but we are about 10 to 14 million per day. So
Wow.
every
And
day,
this was back in 2010,
2010,
right? Oh
2010.
my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
So this rate limiting or throttling at Microsoft is something that it's a mechanism that exists since it's that old. And and I just want to point out that if you're doing, if what you're sending is having, those messages back to you, that is a symptom of something. It's a symptom that they are pushing back because there's something that is happening either on the content that you're sending or the people that you're trying to reach that might not like it. And it's a good idea to investigate. And or yeah, look at the signs. There's some things that, you mentioned volume. There isn't a set number, but I do recall when I was sending, when we reached above 20,000 to Hotmail or Microsoft addresses, and we weren't at a good place with Microsoft, then we would start seeing some of that. And what did we do? We got more IPs. And what did
Mm,
that get us eventually? Well, we got listed on Spam House because we spread our
mm,
volume across so many IPs that we were doing what's something called a snowshoe attack. So that's when you spread the
mm.
load of your email volume across many, many, many IPs. And guess who else does that? Real actual spammers. And that's
Yep.
why, you know, all of that, that's why I said it started with that's a symptom of something. Definitely something, step back, try to understand what's going on. And maybe a poor, like a ramp up that didn't go as well. You can't just go from 100 to 100,000, as you pointed out. To that point, I think we have a question that touches on that.
This one came from Rohit, and he asks, what weekly growth rate is preferred if you don't want to be in the spam folder? And he goes and gives an example of like, okay, if I'm sending an email to 100 users in the next week, 1,000 in the next week, 10,000, the growth percentage is the same, but at what point will the email enter spam?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Um, all right, I think there's one important. That's something that I talk about all the time. I mean, that warm up period where you get an IP that is fresh, is brand new, right? And you want to start sending email from it, but you can't just go from 0 to 100. You got to warm it up. And there's a strategy behind it. And that strategy isn't something that we invented from the industry, something that mailbox provider have publicly informed everyone how to do it. And they have on their postmaster pages a lot of tips on the ideal way to do that. And basically they are saying send to people that are engaged with you, that want to receive your messages, because their signals, like reading your messages, and if they landed on the spam folder, go to the spam folder and get it. All of those things, they work in your behalf. That it helps you out. So now, with that in mind, um, start small, right? I mean, if you have a list of 100, okay, that's a good starting point. I usually recommend, like, mailbox providers they want to see people opening your messages. So, like, focus on your very, very, very best subscribers. Like, historically, if new users are the ones that are more prone to open your message, start with them and start small, because you want to get the majority of them opening and interacting with your message. So if you think that number is 100, I think that's a good starting point. 200, that's okay too. That's good. 1,000, it could actually be 1,000. We have seen that work. 1,000 is a good starting point as well. But the truth is, there isn't a specific number. You got to try it out. But the ultimate goal is you just send out to people, and as they start, you see that in your metrics that they are engaging, then send a little bit more. And that little bit more varies. I usually tend to grow slowly, 20, 30% from the previous volume. So if you send daily, then you could try to increase 20% more the next day, and then 20% more the next day. But it depends on also what you're sending, right? If you're sending a lot of things that people don't want, then maybe it's something that you got to step back and maybe don't grow as fast. So it's more of an art
Mhm.
in a way than an exact science, I guess. But definitely it's more of be 100% sure that you're setting things that will work in your favor, and not that will count against you. Like, don't start sending to people that are from this cold list that the intern just got from like an event that he attended last week, right? It has nothing to do with you. Start with those that are expecting and that are, will help you out, and grow slowly. And also try it, map that out. I mean, if you have to understand where you want to reach. Like, it's not a sprint. This is definitely
Mhm.
a marathon that you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to stop, take a breather, drink some water, and think about like how fast you want to start this again. I mean, you're not gonna start running 100%, right? You're gonna slowly pick up until you are back in the rhythm, right? But it depends. But yeah, that's a good question. I like talking about warm up
Yeah,
because
that was
definitely
a really good one.
it's something that it's not often talked about. I mean, people, they expect email, I mean, to just work. Send,
Mhm.
it's there, and that's it. It's not an ad, but depending on how you use it, it can be perceived as an ad or even very annoying. So that's what you want to avoid. Next question. This one is for you. Any strategy to warm up other than sending small amounts each day and for each day hour for days? That's from Felipe Braganza.
Yeah, I feel like you touch on a really important point here, which is not all about volume, right? It's about what is exactly you're trying to send, and if there are strategies that you can use to get more engagement out of that sending. So that could be, you know, not only looking at data that you have, like, okay, clicks and open tracking, but maybe going to your product. If you have like a SaaS product, go to your product, see who are the most engaged users, maybe send to a subset of them, and then warm up with that group of like top users that are using your product. And then you start expanding to accounts that were created a year ago and they haven't logged into your service in a while, right? Of course, you still want to talk to them and you want to resurrect those accounts that are maybe dormant, and you're trying to use email as a way to do that. But if you start from that, then you're not going to see as much engagement. So look into engagement points that are maybe outside of the email land, but maybe inside your own data warehouse or inside your own SaaS. And yeah, maybe like be creative around the content that you can write. And that could be emails that you are asking people to react and reply. There's nothing more important there's nothing more actionable for inbox providers to trust you than to say like, oh yeah, this person sent an email and somebody responded. And actually, like, from those 1,000 people that they sent, 100 responded or 50 responded. Wow. Okay. They're actually a legit sender. So make sure you think about that versus an email that, like, okay, no one will act, either like no one will open or no one will click on the links, because Gmail, Microsoft, like all these inbox providers, they're looking into how are people behaving and how are they reacting to what you send. So keep that in mind, and that will help with your warm up as well. Rafael, this was super fun. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
being
man.
here. I feel like we could keep talking about this for hours.
We can. We have done that.
Yeah, so yeah, I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Call me in anytime. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.